Yeah, hey, let's drink from the cup or share some luck. Go ahead and laugh.
Welcome back into the Pulse Network. I'm Maggie Bruley here on CIO Insight, joined in studio by Eric Lundquist. And Eric, we're both super excited for our next guest to come on the program, but I'm going to let you do the honors of introducing him.
Well, Simon, it's Eric Lundquist. How are you doing?
Eric, great to see you again.
Yeah, well, you're a Maggie. He's a legend.
A legend. That's what I keep hearing, Simon.
Well, I'm a legend working from home in my T-shirt, so
that's all the legends do, right?
Nowadays.
Well, you look like someone working on a startup, and that's what you're doing right now. Last time we talked, you were still at Citrix, but you've been with a Zen Source, which was acquired by Citrix, and now you're doing Bromium, which, you know, Simon, you really haven't told the world too much what that's all about. Can you give us a little clue?
I can give you a clue. You know, I spent the last 2 years of my life working on what I think, perhaps to be a little bold, is one of the most secure client systems ever built, and that was Citrix Zen Client. And we designed that in collaboration with some of the most demanding agencies of the federal government, who really care about, you know, security, particularly around issues such as WikiLeaks. And at the same time, been digging deeply into the cloud with this goal of trying to build secure cloud services and get customers to the point where they can trust the cloud and deal with all their requirements for regulatory compliance and so on. And so Bromium is really it's the next big step in that direction. And what we have figured out how to do is how to use virtualization technology to dramatically change the odds in security in favor of the good guys.
Because, you know, at one point, you know, I think people felt virtualization, the ability to create virtual instances, the sort of disbursement of, you know, capabilities throughout an infrastructure could make things less secure. But it seems like you're saying you're coming up with a model to make them more secure.
I think, again, I'll be happy to be bold. It's kind of my want to do so. I'm going to say that all of the virtues of virtualization, of which there are many, they've all delivered manageability and agility and availability benefits, which people are pretty familiar with. But if I'm right, and if we pull it off at Bromium, then it's going to turn out to be the case that the real value of virtualization is security. And if we're right in that, then we should be able to transform trust in terms of cloud computing and really dramatically change the odds here. We're trying to tackle some very hard problems, though.
Yeah, no, you are. I mean, security, privacy, and identity sort of all go hand in hand. Do you address all three of these elements in Bromium?
We'd like to. Obviously, security is an infinitely deep hole in which to fall, and we have to be cautious about this. You know, I think security is not the problem. Actually, the problem is trust. We need to be able to get people to the point where they can trust in the computing infrastructure that they're using, and trust is always around two parties. It's about how I communicate with you, how I communicate with the cloud, and so on. One of the key things that I would observe related to recent security threats, the people obviously say the cloud cannot be trusted, and they point to a whole bunch of scary things that go on all the time. The most obvious statement is that, in fact, the cloud is generally not the reason that compromises occur. The most common attacks occur through compromised client systems. And so if you look at, for example, WikiLeaks as an attack vector, look at recent attacks on RSA, on Google in the original Chinese Gmail attack, those occurred through compromised enterprise clients. Okay. And so you can do whatever you want to secure a cloud. You can build a private cloud, but you aren't secure unless you manage to secure access to it. And then your ability to trust the people who are actually communicating with your cloud and know who they are is fundamental. So identity comes into it, and end-to-end assurance.
You know, the two elements I'm curious about, Simon, is one, you know, end-to-end security, consumer security. More and more consumers are accessing webs, obviously via smartphones, via mobile devices. At the same time, as Maggie and I were doing on the intro news pieces, you know, anonymous hackers, you know, the head of cybersecurity for the U.S. sort of quit suddenly. There just seems to be a lot more attacks going on the network, and I think it's making consumers feel a little more nervous about accessing the network. Does Bromium address some of these issues?
Well, so I question whether or not consumers are nervous. I mean, every one of us has got a smartphone in our pockets. We're all on Facebook and whatever else all the time, and we seem to be pretty happy with lax security there. And I would argue that it is this consumer experience that is the threat to the enterprise. That is, we expect similar levels of access when we walk into the enterprise, where obviously the rules are entirely different. Moreover, we walk these new devices and new experiences into the enterprise every day. And even if I get an enterprise device, an enterprise laptop, I happen to use it to browse to places that are clearly suspicious. And so it is the consumer in me that is the danger to my enterprise. And I don't think that the enterprise has caught up with the demands that this consumerization trend is placing on applications and back-end infrastructure. And so let's just make it here's a very simple example. I want to send a big file to you, and if I can't do it, I'm just going to drag it into Dropbox, right? Because I'm just trying to be productive.
Yeah.
And therein lies a huge threat to the enterprise. So people tell me they aren't going to use the cloud, and my answer is, you are. You just don't know about it. Your employees are using it already.
So this idea of the prosumer, where the people within an enterprise bring in their own devices, their own smartphones, and then leave it up to IT and CIOs to try to figure out how to secure the applications going into those devices. Is that a trend that you see increasing?
Well, look at the example I just gave you. Dropbox is not an IT-approved application.
Right.
It's just an application that I happen to pick out of an app store that works for me. So suddenly you find third-party applications which the enterprise did not approve operating on enterprise data. And that's just a simple one. It's trying to just store this stuff. So increasingly, the enterprise is out of control, not only of the choice of the devices, the networks, the applications that people use, and the enterprise's data, the stuff that it really cares about, is being dragged through all of this. And that poses very substantial challenges. And I think that trying to close the door is not the way forward. That is, every history teaches us that every time we have tried to stop this consumerization trend, we have failed. And the consumer in us wants better user experiences, a better technology experience, and will always win.
Well, before I throw it back to Maggie, let me just ask you, I think you left Citrix in June of this year. When do you think we'll see some of the first products or services coming from Bromium?
By the end of this year.
Okay, Maggie, we put that on the calendar. We're going to call Simon back.
The end of this year. Simon, you teased us. Simon, before we let you go, I just want to have one last question from my perspective. You mentioned, CIOs, CTOs don't know necessarily that their employees are already using the cloud. Now, I'm not a CIO, I'm not a CTO, but I am an employee. So from my perspective, I want to keep going about my business on the server, doing what I do every day online. How dangerous am I, and is that mentality for an organization or for a CIO?
You are a threat to your enterprise. Very simply, here's a very simple example, and it's not your fault, by the way.
I like that, though. I'm a threat.
Somebody sends you an email with an attack in it because they were attacked and you happen to be in their contact list, right? So it's not even you being, you might have just done nothing at all, but one of your associates sends you an email, because social engineering is a great way of attacking people. It's very easy to say, here's the latest update, click here, and then next second, you're in your email, you click on an attachment, and that's it. The system is compromised. And at that point, all of your data is exposed, even if it's encrypted at rest on the computer system. And suddenly the enterprise is being attacked by you, even though you're an unwitting vector of the attack.
Did you hear that,
Maggie,
Eric?
you are one dangerous woman. I knew that. We all knew that.
Taking you down, Eric. All right, Simon, thank you so much for coming on CIO Insight, even if you did call me a threat to my own program. But so great to have you on, and we'll be anxiously waiting for Bromium, whatever technologies you come out with. So
thank you so much for having me. It's always great to speak to you guys.
Thanks, Simon. Once again, Simon Crosby from Bromium. All right, guys, we do have some more CIO Insight lined up for you, so make sure you stay right here on the Pulse Network for more CIO Insight lined up next.
The Pulse Network. It's social TV.